The little girl couldn't have been more than 8 years old when she stumbled into Rusty's garage at 9:47 on a Tuesday night, barefoot, tears streaming down her dirt-stained cheeks, clutching a crumpled piece of paper in her tiny fist, like it held the last hope in the world. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Big Mike Rodriguez was elbow deep in a 1987 Harley transmission when he heard the shop bell jingle. The sound cut through the rumble of classic rock and the hiss of air compressors. He looked up, expecting to see another late-night customer looking for a quick fix, or maybe Jerry coming back for his forgotten wallet. Instead, he saw something that would change everything. A child. Alone. Terrified. Her blonde hair matted with sweat and tears, wearing nothing but a torn Disney princess nightgown that had seen better days. Her bare feet were cut and dirty, like she'd run through gravel and broken glass to get here. But it was her eyes that stopped Big Mike's heart. 8 years old, and those blue eyes had already seen too much, had already learned to expect the worst from the world. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the radio playing in the corner. "Please save my mama tonight. He's gonna kill her this time." The garage went dead silent. 4 grown men, each carrying their own scars from life's battles, stood frozen as this tiny girl's words hung in the air like smoke from a crash. Big Mike set down his wrench with hands that suddenly felt too large, too rough for this moment. 23 years in the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club had taught him to read danger in shadows and silence. But this was different. This was pure, desperate innocence, asking him to be something he'd never thought he could be. A hero. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Mike asked, his voice gentler than anyone who knew. Thaden would believe possible. He knelt slowly, bringing his 6'4" frame down to eye level with the child. "Emma," she hiccuped, wiping her nose with the back of her small hand. "Emma Johnson. My mama. She told me to run if Daddy got the baseball bat again. She told me to find the motorcycle man because—" Her voice cracked. "Because good people help good people." Behind Mike, his brothers had stopped their work entirely. Diesel Williams, a mountain of a man who'd gotten his road name from his ability to fix any engine ever built, stood with a socket wrench hanging forgotten in his grip. Snake Morrison, lean and quick with tattoos covering his arms like a second skin, had pushed back from the Kawasaki he'd been rebuilding. And Preacher Davis, the club's 70-year-old chaplain who'd seen combat in Vietnam and buried too many friends, slowly removed his reading glasses as he processed what he was hearing. The garage felt charged, electric, like the moment before lightning strikes and changes the landscape forever. "Where's your mama now, Emma?" Mike kept his voice steady, but his brothers could see the storm building behind his dark eyes. They'd ridden with him long enough to recognize that look. It meant someone was about to have a very bad day. Emma pulled out the crumpled paper, her small hand shaking as she smoothed it against her nightgown. Her mother's handwriting, hurried and desperate, covered the back of what looked like a grocery receipt. "If something happens to me, Emma knows to run to the motorcycle garage on Elm Street. Her daddy isn't her daddy. He's getting worse. I've tried to leave, but he finds us. Tonight he came home different, angrier. Please help my baby girl. Sarah Johnson, 1247 Maple Drive." Mike read the note twice, his jaw tightening with each word. He looked at Emma, this tiny warrior who'd had the courage to run into the night seeking help from strangers. "How far did you run, sweetheart?" "I don't know," Emma whispered. "Far. My feet hurt." Diesel moved first, his massive frame surprisingly gentle as he knelt beside Mike. "Can you tell us about your daddy, Emma? What makes him so angry?" Emma's eyes went wide with fear. "He's not my real daddy. My real daddy died when I was little. This one. He drinks the bottles that smell bad, and then he gets mad at Mama for everything. Tonight," he said. She started crying harder. "He said he was tired of pretending to love us, and maybe it was time to stop pretending." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The four men exchanged looks. They'd all seen violence, had lived through their own versions of hell. But hearing it described through the innocence of a child who should be worried about homework and cartoons instead of baseball bats and death threats that cut deeper than any knife. Preacher spoke up, his voice carrying the weight of decades of ministering to broken souls. "Emma, honey, is your mama hurt right now?" Emma nodded frantically. "She told me to hide in the closet, but I could hear her screaming. She kept saying, 'Please stop and don't hurt her.' That's when she made me promise to run here. She said the motorcycle men would know what to do." Mike's hands curled into fists. Beside him, Snake was already reaching for his phone, fingers moving quickly across the screen. "What are you doing, Snake?" Diesel asked. "Calling the boys," Snake said grimly. "All of them. Emma's mama was right about one thing. We do know what to do." Mike looked at his phone. 10:23 p.m. Emma had been running for over 30 minutes, which meant whatever was happening at 1247 Maple Drive had been going on for at least that long. In his experience, 30 minutes was a lifetime when violence was involved. "Emma," he said carefully, "I need you to be very brave and tell me exactly what your daddy looks like. Can you do that?" Emma wiped her eyes and nodded. "He's big, bigger than you. He has black hair and mean eyes and a scar right here." She pointed to her chin. "He works at the factory where they make car parts. He always wears his work boots, even at home. Mama says he likes how they sound when he walks." The detail about the boots hit Mike in the gut. This wasn't random violence. This was calculated intimidation. This man enjoyed making his family afraid. Snake finished his phone call and looked at Mike. "Brothers are rolling out now, ETA 15 minutes. But Mike," he paused, checking his phone again. "I had Torch do a quick search on the address. Sarah Johnson called 911 4 times in the past 6 months. Each time she canceled before units arrived, claiming it was a mistake. Classic," Preacher muttered. "He threatens her if she talks to cops. Probably told her what he'd do if she ever brought the law to his door." Diesel was already moving toward the wall where the club's emergency gear hung. First aid kits, tire irons, and other tools that could serve multiple purposes. "What's the plan, Mike?" Mike looked down at Emma, who was watching them with a mixture of hope and terror. This little girl had run barefoot through the night to find them because her mother believed bikers would help when no one else would. That faith couldn't be misplaced. "The plan is simple," Mike said, standing to his full height. "We go get Emma's mama, and we make sure her stepfather understands that hitting women and scaring children isn't acceptable behavior in our neighborhood." Emma's eyes lit up. "You'll really save her?" "Sweetheart," Mike said, pulling his leather cut from a chair and sliding his massive arms through it. "That's a promise. But first, we need to get you somewhere safe." "I want to come," Emma said quickly. "I want to see Mama." "And you will," Preacher said, moving toward her with surprising gentleness for a man his age. "But first, we're going to take you to Miss Betty's diner next door. She'll give you some hot chocolate and clean up those feet while we go talk to your stepfather." Emma looked uncertain. "What if he hurts Mama more while you're gone?" Mike knelt again, meeting her eyes. "Emma, I want you to listen to me very carefully. My brothers and I, we've spent our whole lives learning how to protect people. We're very good at it. Your mama sent you to us because she knew we'd keep our promises. And I'm promising you right now, nobody is going to hurt your mama ever again." The sound of motorcycles began rumbling in the distance, growing louder. Emma's eyes widened as she recognized the sound that had brought her hope. "Are those your friends?" she asked. "Those are your protectors," Mike corrected. "Every single one of them." By 10:45 p.m., the parking lot of Rusty's garage looked like something from a movie. 43 motorcycles arranged in perfect formation, their riders standing beside their machines like sentinels. Chrome gleamed under the streetlights. Leather cuts displayed patches earned through loyalty and brotherhood. And 43 pairs of eyes focused on the little girl in the torn nightgown who'd brought them together. Iron wolves from 3 counties had dropped everything and ridden through the night because one of their own had made a call. Because a child needed help. Because sometimes the world calls you to be better than you ever thought possible. Mike stood at the front of the group, Emma's small hand in his. Behind him, the Brotherhood waited for orders. Diesel and his road crew from the south side. Hammer and the garage mechanics from downtown. Ghost and the night shift workers who'd left their jobs to be here. Veterans and construction workers, teachers and truck drivers, grandfathers and young men just finding their way in the world. What united them wasn't their bikes or their patches. It was their understanding that protecting the innocent wasn't just a responsibility, it was a calling. Brothers. Mike's voice carried across the parking lot. This is Emma Johnson, 8 years old. Ran here barefoot tonight because her stepfather is hurting her mother. The address is 1247 Maple Drive, about 6 miles east. Man's name is presumably Johnson. Works at the auto parts factory, bigger than me, has a history of domestic violence. A murmur rippled through the group. 43 men who'd seen the worst humanity had to offer, and they were still shocked by the depths some people would sink to. "What's the play?" called out Hammer, a grizzled veteran whose real name no one had used in 15 years. "We go there. We assess the situation. We extract the mother safely. And we make it clear that this family is now under Iron Wolf's protection." Mike's voice carried absolute authority. "But we do this smart. No vigilante justice. No criminal behavior. We're not giving this bastard any excuse to make us the bad guys." Snake stepped forward. "I already called it in to dispatch. Told them we were responding to a domestic disturbance as concerned citizens. Gave them our club name and said we'd cooperate fully with law enforcement." "Good thinking." Mike nodded. "This needs to be clean. Above board. Emma's going to need her mama, and her mama's going to need a safe place to start over. That doesn't happen if we're all in jail." Emma tugged on Mike's jacket. When he bent down, she whispered in his ear, "Are you sure Mama will be okay?" Mike looked into those 8-year-old eyes that had already seen too much fear. "Emma, I want you to look around. See all these motorcycles? All these people who came here tonight just because you asked for help?" Emma nodded, her eyes wide as she took in the impressive sight. "Every single one of these people has made the same promise I made you. We're going to bring your mama home safe. And then we're going to make sure nobody ever hurts either of you again." Preacher appeared at Mike's elbow, leading a small, elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes. "Emma, sweetheart, this is Miss Betty. She owns the diner next door, and she's going to take very good care of you while we go get your mama." Betty Jenkins had been feeding bikers, truckers, and late-night wanderers for 37 years. She'd seen everything and judged nothing. Looking at Emma, she saw her own granddaughter, and her grandmother's heart broke for this brave little girl. "Come on, honey," Betty said, extending her hand. "Let's get you some hot chocolate and see about cleaning up those poor feet. And I think I've got some clothes that might fit you better than that nightgown." Emma looked uncertain, torn between trusting these strangers and her desperate need to see her mother safe. "I'll tell you what," Mike said. "Miss Betty has a radio in her diner. Soon as we find your mama, I'm going to call Miss Betty and let you talk to her yourself." "Deal." Emma considered this seriously, then nodded. "Deal. But promise you'll bring her back." "On my honor as an Iron Wolf," Mike said solemnly. As Betty led Emma toward the diner, the little girl looked back over her shoulder. "Mr. Mike? Thank you for believing me." Mike felt something crack in his chest. How many times had this child asked for help and been ignored? How many adults had failed her before she'd been desperate enough to run into the night seeking salvation from strangers? "Mount up," he called to his brothers. "We've got a promise to keep." 43 engines roared to life in perfect synchronization. The sound echoed off buildings and rattled windows, announcing to anyone listening that the Iron Wolves were riding with purpose. 1247 Maple Drive sat in a neighborhood that had seen better decades. Small houses with chain-link fences and cars that were more rust than metal. The kind of place where people minded their own business and pretended not to hear the sounds that came through thin walls. But tonight, that willful blindness was about to end. The Iron Wolves arrived like a controlled storm. Mike led the convoy, followed by his officers, then the rest of the Brotherhood in tight formation. They didn't race or rev their engines unnecessarily. This wasn't about intimidation, it was about presence. about making a statement that some things wouldn't be tolerated. The house at 1247 was dark, except for one window where a harsh light spilled across the dying lawn. Even from the street, they could hear raised voices. A man shouting, a woman pleading. Mike held up his fist, and 43 engines went silent simultaneously. In the sudden quiet, the sounds from the house became crystal clear. "I told you what would happen if you ever called the cops, Sarah. Now look what you've done." "I didn't call anyone. I swear, Danny. I didn't." "Then where's your precious little brat?" "She was supposed to be in her room." The sound of something breaking. Glass hitting the floor. A woman's cry of pain. Mike's jaw clenched. Beside him, Diesel was already off. His bike, hand reaching toward the tire iron strapped to his frame. "Easy, brother," Mike warned quietly. "We do this right." Snake jogged over from where he'd been coordinating with dispatch. "Cops are 5 minutes out. They want us to wait for them to arrive." "That woman doesn't have 5 minutes." Hammer growled from behind them. Mike looked at the house, calculating. Standard suburban layout. Probably built in the 60s. Front door, back door, maybe a side entrance through the garage. One man inside, probably drunk, definitely violent, with a woman who'd been taking abuse for months or years. "Here's what we're going to do," Mike said quietly, his voice carrying to every member of the Brotherhood. "Snake, take 6 men and cover the back of the house. Make sure he doesn't run. Hammer, you and your crew watch the sides. The rest of us are going through the front door." "What's the legal standing?" asked Ghost. "Ever the practical one." "Citizen's arrest," Mike replied. "We heard screaming. We have reasonable suspicion that someone's in immediate danger, and we're acting to prevent further harm." "By the book." The front porch creaked under Mike's weight as he approached the door, followed by Diesel and Preacher. Behind them, the rest of the Brotherhood formed a semicircle in the yard, a wall of leather and determination. Mike knocked, 3 solid raps that announced serious intent. The shouting inside stopped immediately. "Who the hell is that?" Danny Johnson's voice carried through the door, slurred and aggressive. "Concerned neighbors." Mike called back. "We heard screaming. Just want to make sure everyone's okay. Mind your own damn business. Everything's fine here." "Then you won't mind opening the door and letting us see that for ourselves." Silence. Then the sound of heavy footsteps approaching. The porch light flicked on, and Mike found himself face to face with Danny Johnson through the screen door. Emma had been right. He was big, maybe 6'5", with the thick arms and shoulders of a factory worker. His face was flushed with alcohol and rage, black hair disheveled, and yes, there was the scar on his chin that Emma had mentioned. But what struck Mike most were his eyes. Cold. Empty. The eyes of someone who enjoyed causing pain. "I don't know who you think you are," Johnson snarled, "but you need to get the hell off my property before I call the cops." "Already called." Snake's voice drifted from the backyard. "They should be here any minute." Johnson's face went white, then red with fury. "This is harassment. I know my rights." "And we know ours," Mike replied calmly. "Now, we're going to need to see Sarah Johnson. Make sure she's unharmed." "She's fine. She's sleeping." "Then wake her up. Let her tell us herself." Johnson's grip tightened on the door frame. Behind him, Mike could see into the living room. Overturned furniture, broken glass, a baseball bat leaning against the wall, and Mike's blood ran cold. "Sarah," Mike called, past Johnson. "Sarah Johnson, can you hear me?" A weak voice from somewhere in the house. "Help, please." That was all Mike needed to hear. "Danny Johnson," he said formally, "you're under citizen's arrest for domestic violence and assault. You can step aside and let us help that woman, or we can move you aside. Your choice." Johnson laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. "You in what army, biker trash?" Mike stepped back and gestured to the yard. Johnson's eyes followed his movement, and his face went slack. 40 bikers stood in his yard. 40 men who'd ridden through the night because a little girl had asked for help. They weren't holding weapons. They weren't making threats. They were just standing there. A wall of quiet determination that spoke louder than any shouting ever could. That army, Mike said quietly. Johnson's bravado cracked like ice under pressure. He'd spent years terrorizing a woman and child because he could. Because he was bigger and stronger and meaner. But faced with 40 men who'd seen real violence, who'd fought real battles, who understood the difference between strength and brutality, he revealed himself for what he truly was. A coward. This is illegal. He stammered, backing away from the door. You can't just. We can and we are, Mike said, stepping through the doorway. Sarah? Where are you? Kitchen, came the weak reply. Mike found her sitting on the floor beside the refrigerator, her back against the wall. Sarah Johnson was 34 years old, but looked 50. Blonde hair matted with blood. Her left eye was swelling shut. Her lip was split, and she was cradling her right arm against her chest in a way that suggested it might be broken. But when she looked up and saw Mike, she smiled through the pain. You're real, she whispered. Emma found you. She really found you. Mike knelt beside her, his voice gentle. Yes, ma'am. Emma's safe. She's having hot chocolate at a diner about 6 miles from here with a very nice lady named Miss Betty. She sent us to come get you. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. Is she okay? Her feet were bleeding when I told her to run. I was so scared for her. She's fine. Brave as hell. Just like her mama. Mike looked at her injuries, his jaw tightening. How bad are you hurt? I think my arm is broken. And my ribs. She winced as she tried to move. But I'm alive. For a while there, I didn't think I would be. Behind them, Johnson hovered in the doorway, held back by Diesel's massive presence. Sarah, tell them this is a misunderstanding. Tell them you fell down the stairs. Sarah looked at her husband with something Mike had seen in war zones. The flat, empty stare of someone who'd moved beyond fear into something colder. I fell down the stairs, she said. After you pushed me. I fell against the coffee table after you hit me with the bat. I fell into the kitchen cabinet after you threw me across the room. Her voice grew stronger with each word. I've been falling for 3 years, Danny. But I'm done falling now. Johnson's face twisted with rage. You ungrateful bitch. I gave you everything. I married you when nobody else wanted a single mother. You gave me hell, Sarah shot back. And you gave my daughter nightmares. Mike stood slowly, turning to face Johnson. Danny Johnson, you're under arrest for domestic violence, assault, and child endangerment. You have the right to remain silent. You can't arrest me. You're not cops. Citizen's arrest. Preacher said from the doorway, where he was now standing with 2 uniformed police officers. Completely legal when witnessing a felony in progress. The cavalry had arrived. Officer Maria Santos and her partner Officer James Wright had worked domestic violence cases for years. They knew the signs, understood the cycle, and had seen too many situations end in tragedy when help came too late. Ma'am, Officer Santos said, kneeling beside Sarah with practiced gentleness. I'm Officer Santos. Can you tell me what happened here tonight? As Sarah began giving her statement, Mike watched Johnson being handcuffed by Officer Wright. The man who'd terrorized a woman and child for years was crying now, begging, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, promising he'd never do it again. Please, Johnson sobbed as they led him toward the police car. Sarah, please, I love you. I can change. Sarah looked at him one last time. You love controlling me. You love hurting me. You've never loved me. She turned to Mike. Can I see Emma now? The diner at 11:47 p.m. looked like a scene from a Norman Rockwell painting. If Norman Rockwell had painted bikers and broken families, finding hope in unexpected places. Emma sat in a corner booth, wearing a clean pink sweatshirt that Betty had found in her lost and found box. Her feet were bandaged, and she was sipping hot chocolate while carefully coloring in a coloring book that one of the Iron Wolves had run to buy at the Rastons' all-night convenience store. When the door opened and Mike walked in supporting her mother, Emma's face lit up like Christmas morning. Mama! She scrambled out of the booth and ran across the diner, careful not to spill her cocoa. Sarah knelt painfully and wrapped her good arm around her daughter, holding her like she'd never let go again. My brave girl. My brave, brave girl. I found them, Mama. Just like you said, I found the motorcycle men, and they came to save you. You did perfect, baby. Perfect. Mike watched the reunion from across the diner, feeling something he hadn't experienced in years. Peace. The knowledge that they'd done something that mattered, that they'd kept a promise to a child who'd had the courage to ask for help. Betty appeared at his elbow with a cup of coffee. EMTs checked her out. Broken arm, bruised ribs, concussion. But she'll heal. And the bastard? In custody. Officer Santos says they've got enough evidence to put him away for a long time. Plus, now that Sarah's ready to press charges, they can reopen those previous domestic disturbance calls. Mike nodded, sipping his coffee. Across the diner, Emma was showing her mother the coloring book, chattering about Miss Betty and the nice motorcycle man who'd bought her chocolate chip cookies. Diesel slid into the booth across from Mike. Safe house is set up. Club's got a contact at the women's shelter downtown. They'll have a place to stay while Sarah gets back on her feet. Legal help? Chains is already on it. Divorce papers, restraining order, the works. Pro bono. Mike looked around the diner. His brothers were scattered across various booths and tables, some talking quietly, others just watching the reunion with satisfied expressions. 43 men who dropped everything because a child had asked for help. Good job tonight, brothers, he said quietly, his voice carrying to every iron wolf in the room. This is what it's about. This is why we ride. Emma broke away from her mother and approached Mike's table, her small hand clutching something behind her back. Mr. Mike, I made something for you. She held out a piece of paper torn from the coloring book. In crayon, she'd drawn what was clearly meant to be a motorcycle with a figure sitting on it. The figure had a beard and was wearing what looked like a leather jacket. Above it, in careful 8-year-old handwriting, she'd written, "My hero." Mike felt his throat tighten. Emma, this is the best picture anyone's ever given me. It's you, she said seriously. You came when I asked. Mama says angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they have motorcycles. Your mama's a smart lady. Emma looked back at Sarah, who was now talking with Officer Santos and a social worker who'd arrived to help with emergency housing. Will we see you again? After tonight? Mike looked down at this brave little girl who'd changed his understanding of what it meant to be strong. Emma, do you know what ironing wolves do? She shook her head. We protect our pack. And you and your mama? Your pack now. That means if you ever need anything, ever feel scared, ever just want to talk to someone who understands, you call us day or night. You've got 43 big brothers now. Emma's eyes went wide. Really? Really? That's a promise. And iron wolves keep their promises. She hugged him then, her small arms barely reaching around his massive frame. And Big Mike Rodriguez, who'd been in bar fights and biker wars, who'd seen combat and violence and the worst humanity had to offer, felt tears on his cheeks. 3 months later, Rusty's garage received a special visitor. Emma Johnson, soon to be Emma Patterson, once her mother reclaimed her maiden name, walked through the front door, wearing a school uniform and a huge smile. Behind her came Sarah, walking upright now, no longer flinching at sudden sounds. Mr. Mike, Mr. Diesel, Mr. Preacher, Emma called out, running to greet the men, who'd become her extended family. Mike wiped grease from his hands and scooped her up, marveling at how much healthier she looked. Color in her cheeks, laughter in her eyes, the haunted look replaced by the natural joy of a 9-year-old girl who felt safe in the world. How's school, kiddo? I got an A on my report about heroes, Emma announced proudly. I wrote about you guys, Mrs. Henderson said it was the best story she'd ever read. Sarah approached more slowly, still shy around the bikers who'd saved her life. I wanted to thank you again. All of you. The lawyer you recommended got the restraining order. And Danny, he pled guilty. 5 years minimum. How are you doing? Mike asked gently. Better. The job at the medical center is working out well. Emma loves her new school. We have a little apartment about 10 minutes from here. Sarah smiled, and Mike realized it was the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. We're going to be okay. Course you are. Diesel rumbled from across the garage. Your pack. Emma wiggled out of Mike's arms and ran to the wall where her crayon drawing now hung in a place of honor, framed and mounted next to photos of club events and fallen brothers. "You kept it," she said happily. "Told you it was the best picture anyone ever gave me," Mike said. "It reminds us why we do what we do." As they prepared to leave, Emma tugged on Mike's jacket one more time. "Mr. Mike, will you teach me to ride a motorcycle when I'm bigger?" Mike looked at Sarah, who rolled her eyes but smiled. "We'll see, kiddo. We'll see." After they left, the garage settled back into its familiar rhythm. Engines and tools and radio playing classic rock. But the picture remained on the wall, a reminder that sometimes the most important rides aren't about freedom or rebellion or proving anything to anyone. Sometimes they're about a little girl who ran barefoot through the night because she believed that good people help good people. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, she's right. The Iron Wolves continued their work, protecting the innocent, keeping promises, proving that brotherhood isn't about patches or bikes or leather cuts. It's about showing up when someone needs you most. It's about being the answer when a child whispers into the darkness, "Please save my mama tonight." And it's about understanding that sometimes the angels do ride motorcycles. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.